How goes it? I'm Logan, and I've been thinking, I am a lot like a video game console. I will die at some point.
Whether you like it or not, your favorite console has to be put down at some point. For most consoles, it's a few years after their predecessor is released, and for the Wii U, a week after it's released. But when console manufacturers themselves stop caring, it's mainly up to the third parties. Ubisoft is generally a good life support for these systems. By that, I mean they'll release Just Dance games for another decade after everyone else stops caring. You would think these companies would want to end the generation with a bang. Or something depressing like Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for Game Boy Color. So, let's take a look back at the final games released on some game consoles. I'll mainly be focusing on North American releases. Nintendo gave the Nintendo Entertainment System a pretty good amount of support, even after the Super Nintendo was released. Mostly puzzle games on both the NES, SNES, and the Game Boy when they felt like it. But the final official game released on the NES was Wario's Woods on December 1st, 1994. It was a true work of art. It's a pretty simple game, but when I figure out the game, stop playing for a week, and then come back, I will have no clue what I'm doing. Now, it ain't no Super Mario Bros. 3, but it's still a pretty fun time. But the Japanese equivalent, the Famicom's last game, was Adventure Island 4, released on June 4th, 1994. The SNES was a bit of an odd one. Both the Genesis and SNES final game was Frogger, released on October 6th, 1998. Though some could argue that the last game released on the SNES was Star Fox 2. It wasn't released until the SNES Classic Edition in September 29th, 2017. It wasn't released on an official cartridge, so you could go with either game. Ah yes, the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy's final game here in the States was 3D Tetris, because this just wasn't enough. Now, first problem, I don't own a Virtual Boy. Second problem, do you think I care about any of those problems? It's exactly what it sounds like. Tetris, but in 3D. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 was the last game released for the N64. Wow. And the GameCube's last game was Madden 08, released on August 14th, 2007. Nintendo's handhelds always last a pretty short amount of time. The last Game Boy game in North America was Pokemon Yellow on October 18th, 1999. Yeah, Yellow. The Game Boy Advance's final game was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Of course. And the Game Boy Advance's last game was Samurai Deeper Kyo. The Nintendo DS's final game was Big Hero 6 Battle in the Bay, released on October 28th, 2014. Ah yes, the Wii. Who couldn't love this thing's motion controls and the oversaturation of Just Dance? The Wii's final game was Just Dance 2020, moving on. I've had more Nintendo than I can handle, so let's talk about Sega instead. The Sega Master System's last game here in North America was the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog on October 25th, 1991. But the Master System was still going strong outside of the States, with its last game being Mickey's Ultimate Challenge in 1998. The Sega Saturn's was Magic Knight Rayearth on December 11th, 1998, and the Dreamcast was NHL 2K2 on February 14th, 2002. The Game Gear's last game was The Lost World Jurassic Park in August 1997. Both the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 got sports games as their final games, cause what else were they good for? The Xbox's last release was Madden 09. The Atari 2600's last game was Klex in 1990, the 5200's last game was Gremlins in 1986, and the 7800's was Sentinel in 1990.
It's really interesting to go back to these old fossils and see what their last words were. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a funeral to catch. Oh, hey, do you know what his last words were? Oh, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for Game Boy Color. I should know. I was with him.